Hello, my name is Nicola Wass. I'm the CEO of SoMo. We're a behavioural science consultancy and we've got a strong track record in highways and transportation. For those of you who are unsure what behavioural science is, it's the science of human choice and decision making, and it's used by governments and corporations around the world to interpret, predict and change population level behaviour. The case study I'm going to share with you was funded by the Road Safety Trust, Birmingham City Council and Transport for West Midlands. And this case study relates to a road safety problem that was concerning Birmingham City Council. They reached out to us because an area of the city known as East Birmingham was experiencing disproportionately high rates of road traffic casualties. Previous attempts to understand and influence behaviour in this area had failed, so they asked us to come in and shine a light on this problem and, if possible, to uncover some potential solutions. Now, at the time, Birmingham City Council thought that the high rate of casualties in the area could be attributed to young men involved in street racing. And a recent very tragic event, had raised this as an issue for the city. They were keen to do something about it. But were they right? Were they right that the high casualty rates were attributable to this problem behaviour? Well, no, not quite. Because when we interrogated collision data alongside evidence from community interviews, we discovered that whilst young men driving high-performance cars were both visible and annoying to residents of the area, the actual number of casualties attributable to them was very small. The real reason this area had higher deaths and injuries was explained by a very large number of passenger casualties, which was disproportionate to the collision rate. And that strongly suggested that passengers in this location were not wearing seatbelts. So to test this, we undertook an observational study in several priority locations. And what we discovered was pretty startling. It revealed a non-wearing rate of 38%, a staggering 6 times higher than the current national average. By linking a number of data sets, we could see that the majority of these casualties were experienced by people of South Asian origin. And although these casualties affected people of all ages, as you can see from the graph on the right, they peaked between the ages of 16 to 24. So now we had a more accurate diagnosis, low seatbelt use correlating with high casualties. But we didn't know why those rates were so much lower. Why had decades of well-regarded seatbelt campaigns, supported by programmes of enforcement, led to a 94% wearing rate in the rest of the country, but failed to have an impact here? To answer this, we reviewed seatbelt campaigns over the years, and what we discovered was this. All of them used emotion as a lever. Now that's pretty sensible. Emotion is considered to be a very effective lever of behavioural change. However, the people in those campaigns were overwhelmingly of white British origin. Should this matter? Well, actually it matters a lot. Emotion is a very effective driver of behavioural change, but in order to feel emotion, you need to be able to empathise with the people in those campaigns. If the people you're looking at don't look like you and the people you know, or their lives don't reflect your own or what you see every day, then the level of emotion you're going to experience will be far lower and you're far less likely to remember it. So the logic we developed was this. If we could increase the use of seatbelts, we would see a reduction in passenger casualties. But any intervention to increase seatbelt use would need to be tailored to a South Asian population. So in discussion with Birmingham City Council, we reframed that brief to increase use of seatbelts in the 16 to 24-year-old age group. Great, but I don't know what it means to be a South Asian teenager living in Birmingham today, so how can we tailor a campaign to that demographic without being able to stand in their shoes and understand the world from their perspective? To address this, we engaged 20 young people of South Asian heritage in an online community. And here we were able to gain insight into their daily lives, their car journeys, but we were also very interested in their perception of risk. And we set them daily tasks and activities to help us understand their world, their beliefs, their attitudes and behaviours a little bit better. Through this platform, we discovered that young people did not consider lack of a seatbelt as particularly high risk. So any attempt to influence their behaviour by drawing a direct line between non-wearing and a certain outcome of death or injury was likely to be unsuccessful. So we needed a different approach. What we eventually discovered was that all these young people were highly susceptible to something known as anticipated regret. Now, anticipated regret is a very powerful feeling experienced in the present of the remorse you'd feel in the future about the impact of a decision you're currently considering making. So we asked ourselves, what is it that these young people would regret losing if they didn't wear a seatbelt and suffered a negative consequence? Engagement with the young people revealed that family, marriage and educational attainment were very important to this group. Losing any of these things would trigger intense feelings of regret. So this was something we could work with. And we developed these themes and concepts in workshops with the young people, as you can see in this slide. Eventually, we arrived at some behaviourally optimised, tailored messaging and imagery that we all felt was quite strong. But we wouldn't really know whether the behavioural insights we were using had any real power unless we put them to the test. And to do that, we needed something to test them against. We selected the most recent national campaign and the most recent downloadable regional campaign, and then we created a third asset, a decoy that simply provided factual information with no behaviourally optimised tailoring or behavioural levers embedded in it. And we then evaluated these 5 campaigns using a randomised survey that was completed by 400 18 to 24-year-olds, and half of these identified as South Asian. So when we came to evaluate the results, we were at first a little bit surprised. We'd expected the co-design campaigns to perform well among South Asian respondents, but our analysis revealed that the co-design campaigns outperformed national and regional campaigns on all behavioural measures across the whole group, which told us that the insights we developed for South Asian young people were actually transferable to all young people. Anticipated regret spanned and affected the whole group. There was, however, one significant difference. When we looked at all of the different levers of behavioural change that we're measuring, South Asian respondents showed a 35% increase in the level of emotion experienced when viewing one of the tailored campaigns. And this supports our original proposition that young people are more likely to empathise and feel an emotional response when they identify with a campaign actor and its content. And that was an important finding. But, and we always have a lot of buts, the test we just performed is what's known as a laboratory experiment. It gave us proof of principle, but it didn't tell us whether the insights were strong enough to kind of create meaningful change in the real world. And the only way to create real world change, as you'll well know, is to deliver a real world intervention. Now, our early engagement with the young people had signified that the best place to engage young people was on social media. It's where they spend their time. It's where they share their news and information. But that posed some significant challenges. In a world of infinite scrolling, with algorithms tailored to your own individual personal interest, would a road safety campaign even get noticed? Once again, we faced questions we didn't have answers to. There's only one way to answer those questions, and that's to take it into the real world, which is what we did. So, funded by Transport for West Midland and the evaluation funded by the Road Safety Trust, we ran a 6-week campaign, predominantly using short-form videos of under a minute. Further co-design workshops ensured we were using the correct tone and language, but it also allowed us to expand our themes to encompass a broader demographic. You know, not everyone has the aspiration or ability to go on to further or higher education. So working with young people, new themes were uncovered, and these included boxing and car culture. We'd also felt uncomfortable portraying marriage as the only female aspiration, even though that had come from our engagement with the young women in our co-design community. So we engaged them again, and we found out what were their immediate life goals that they were looking forward to gaining in the near future. And across male and female, family and friendship was a key cross-cutting theme. Family ties, family relationships were very important to this group. So I'm not able to show you the videos here, but here are some stills from the first video. Car culture is a really big thing for Birmingham's South Asian young people, and this video tells the story of an older brother who's revealing his revamped, his kind of pimped up car to his young, excited younger brother for the first time, and it's really powerful. And it explores the older brother's deep regret that he didn't tell his cherished younger brother to fasten his seatbelt when taken for a test drive. The second video was targeted to a female demographic, and as I mentioned before, from our workshops, we learned about all of the things that young women aspired to and looked forward to in their immediate life goals and aspirations. And this video stylistically was very, very similar to a lot of the user-generated content, the creator content that you see on TikTok and Instagram Reels. It was fast-paced, it focused on lifestyle. We certainly weren't putting road safety messages at the beginning of these videos. And it was very fast-paced and fun, but with a powerful twist and, again, a strong message. And finally, we shared a story of triumph over adversity and the narrative of a young boxer who defies expectation to achieve his life goal and win a title fight. Now, I can't show you these videos here, but you'll be able to access them from the Road Safety Trust website. We'll either embed some links or upload the original videos. And I would encourage you to look at them because they're all under a minute. And I think you only really get that strong sense of emotion and how we did it to kind of fit in with their existing content when you actually kind of view those videos. So I would encourage you to do so. But how do we do? So we analysed social media analytics, and then we did a randomised sort of sample where we did a survey to just get a bit of a deeper response, a deeper insight into how young people receive these videos. So the analytics told us that the campaign was viewed by 470,697 young people, which is 72% of the total population of 16 to 24-year-olds living in the West Midlands. It reached them and it appeared on their feeds, and these were 72% original kind of individuals' feeds, so you like. Viewing analytics showed us that a very high proportion of those views watched the end. So we knew we managed to capture attention amidst very stiff competition. Now the survey gave us a little bit more of a read into how the young people experienced them. And what was really interesting was that just over half of those surveyed reported they did not regularly wear their seatbelts, if at all, which meant that we'd reached the right audience. Of this group, of this proportion of the respondents, 82% told us that they'd increased seatbelt wearing after viewing the campaign, which is evidence of real-world behavioural change. But perhaps the most impressive finding of all relates to the deep impression the campaign videos left on viewers. The diagram to the right, the diagram you can see on the slide now, was created by the German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus. It's an enduring model that demonstrates that memories are lost over time. And I think in 2015, researchers recreated the experiments and found that it still stands true today. And what you can see from the graph is that without repeating or reinforcing information, the human ability to retain information plummets very rapidly, and by day 5, very little detail remains. Our survey revealed that 4 weeks after watching the campaign, 73% of people who'd seen one of those videos could accurately recall the key message, wear your seatbelt, unprompted, in a free text response. Now, Ebbinghaus was also able to demonstrate a number of determinants that increase our memory and our recall. And one of these was meaning. Is the information meaningful? Heightened emotion has also since been linked to the act of remembering. So by tailoring these campaigns to create empathy and meaning and using emotion linked to feelings of regret, we not only achieved behavioural change in the real world, but we created a campaign with lasting effect. Now, that doesn't mean by any measure that that problem is now permanently solved. You know, a one-off campaign will not create the sort of scale of change needed with this sort of challenge. There is a risk that original behaviours revert back. And so sustainable change comes from repeated, targeted interventions that remind and reinforce that emotion and that memory until a shift in norms are achieved. But these results validated our approach, and they gave Birmingham and Transport for West Midlands the foundations on which to build. But the thing I'd like you to remember is less the story of the campaign or, the videos or even the message. But I'd like you to remember the approach used, because the approach that we followed here is actually transferable to understanding and resolving other behaviours. So let's have a little look. We started by making sure we got an accurate diagnosis of the problem. Once you understand the problem, you have your behavioural opportunity. And the problem here was high casualty rates due to low seatbelt use, and the opportunity is to increase seatbelt use. And that allowed us to create a logic model of change, increase seatbelt use to reduce casualties. But we didn't understand why the problem existed or why previous interventions had failed, so we did some behavioural analysis. And that signified to us that prior campaigns potentially had failed to have the impact in East Birmingham because they lacked the cultural tailoring. They weren't being shown on the also on the channels that people in this area were increasingly using. So it was a case of almost message not received. We then did a behavioural deep dive to identify the correct behavioural strategy, which, as you remember, was anticipated regret and cultural tailoring. We created some assets that allowed us to empirically test the power of those behavioural levers in a randomised trial, and we found that they perform well. But we only knew whether the thing that we created was capable of creating meaningful change when we moved to the stage of creating real-world intervention in the form of a social media campaign, which allowed us to then evaluate impact and where we were able to demonstrate evidence of behaviour change in the real world. So that's kind of brings it all together. But for me, one thing that I am always really at pains to kind of advocate for is that it's time that the public sector's approach to behavioural change became as sophisticated as an approach to innovations in engineering, or the commercial sector's approach to innovating vehicle technology. And whilst behavioural science isn't the only way, by any means, to better understand human behaviour and to design interventions that can prompt a more optimal choice, it does present a more sophisticated way to understand road user behaviour and gives you the tools to change it so you can verifiably and intentionally change behaviour. So I hope you've enjoyed this case study. I think there will actually be a written case study also uploaded to the Road Safety Trust website, along with links to those videos that I referred to. But as always, I'm very, very happy for people to email me, to get in touch with myself and my team if you want to understand a little bit more about either this project or how you can make behavioural science work for you. Thank you.